Hey guys, I'm Carlos Colon with Georgia Perimeter Homes, and today we want to be talking about code violations. We're going to jump right into it real quick and make it a quick video. When we're talking about code violations, we're specifically talking about what it means to meet or exceed code when it comes to a building. Okay, and how does that relate to buying or selling a home, or what should you know? I mean, what is proper and what's improper when it comes to code violations? Um, Code violations. All right, so what are we talking about here? Okay, here's what we're talking about is you get an inspection on a house and your inspector says, your vent for your bathroom is not up to code, or your water heater is not up to code. It needs to have this, this, and this, and it's supposed to have a pan that drains. And there's a lot of things that are stated in these inspection reports. And in a lot of cases, it's not that they're lying, just to be clear. It's just depending on the situation that your home is in, the age, the construction of it, when it was updated, new code versus old code are night and day. Code requirement changes, I mean, every couple years, if not every year. It just depends on what we're talking about, but they're constantly being monitored and changed as you go along. Also, overall code versus more restrictive codes within your county are very different as well. So sometimes you've got code violations when it comes to, like, even, I mean, the color of your building in some places. So your county can be more restrictive than the overall state or the federal requirements, but they can't be less restrictive, if that makes sense. So for the sake of this video, what we're going to be talking about is more safety guidelines than anything else, not necessarily the little nitty gritty, oh, I live in a place where everything has to be this one color tan. All right, so what's important to know about this? So, okay, let's break it down by age. I think that's the most important way we can do this. All right, number one, if you have a brand new house that's being constructed this year or being constructed right now, 100% it should meet all current codes to wherever it's being constructed to, without exception. Okay, that's because it wasn't built 10, 15 years ago when the code was different. It's being built right now. And so it should meet all current codes. Okay? This is important because when we move backwards, that's different, obviously, in time. So, all current codes meaning, yes, your vents, let's say for the period that we're filming this right now, your vents for your bathroom should terminate to an exterior wall or through the roof, to the outside of the home, not in the attic, and it shouldn't just not have a line at all. It has to terminate to the exterior of the house. Okay, so that's one example. Another example would be like expansion tanks on a water heater, right? And every state's a little bit different because even in some states, water heaters should be strapped because some states have issues with earthquakes. And if they're not strapped, there's a good chance that they'll shake and bust a line and then everything will flood. And of course, because of that those particular states developed code within their state that all water heaters must be strapped. And so in this case, we're in the state of Georgia. That is not a requirement at the time that we're filming this right now. So those are good examples of what some code requirements are. And there's, I mean, endless amounts of code when it comes to how a building should be constructed, whether it be commercial or residential, and depending on what kind of residential, how that should be. I mean, there's code saying that you shouldn't go so high. There's also code saying, you know, if you're doing a slab or a foundation that's on a basement, how that should be done and what the minimum requirement should be. Okay? Now, it gets trickier when we move backwards. So now, let's say that you're buying a home built in the 1950s. And you get this inspection report going, oh my God, there's like 30 things that do not meet code in this house. Well, duh, it was built in 1950. So it's not going to meet current code for today. And does that mean that you as a seller should be changing everything inside your home to meet current code? Absolutely not. Okay, like I said, if you have a new home that's being constructed today, it meets current code today. That means when code changes in 5, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're not expected to change that. You were grandfathered in to those that current code where it was built in. Now, as things got better and progressed, a lot of times things were updated. And when they're updated, should they be brought up to code? Hypothetically, yes. It depends on what we're talking about, though. When we're talking about replacing a water heater, that's easy. When we're talking about changing a fuse panel box into a breaker panel box and changing out all of the old wiring, not necessarily. Okay, like I said, 1950s electrical code was very, very different, and what was available back then was very, very different than what's available today. So for safety, would it be safer if it was built up to today's code? Absolutely. But the reality of a homeowner going through that expense versus a financial reward at the end, a lot of times it doesn't equate. It doesn't make any sense to do something like that unless they just want to do that because it's their forever home, right? And so what's important to know about this is there are some things that are important when it comes to buying an older home that even though it was grandfathered in, is still important to do today. I'll give you an example. There was a time when aluminum wiring was okay to have in your home. But see, that was stopped because aluminum wiring is a safety hazard. Okay, because those branches, aluminum wire vibrates at a higher frequency, and so it tends to get looser in its connections, which means it starts arcing once it gets loose to a certain point, which causes fires in homes. That's a safety problem, and that's something that should be addressed in some way, shape, or form. They do have items and certain things you can buy today to make it safer, okay? But should it be addressed? Absolutely. That's a code thing that you need to know about, that you need to know about before you close on this home, for sure, in order to keep your family safe before you move in, okay? There are other things, for example, and I mentioned one of these previously, like a vent in your bathroom that terminates to an attic. That was okay before, and to a point, it's still okay today, to a point. Again, we're talking about older homes, not brand new construction, okay? That means that if there's a 1950s home, 1960s home where it terminated to the attic, okay, great. There is a better way to do it, but back then that was okay. Does that mean that the sellers are 100% responsible for fixing and making it up to today's standard? Absolutely not, because it's grandfathered in that way. So if you as a buyer want to purchase that home and then bring it up to today's standard, you can. Makes no difference, but there's nothing wrong with that in the time it was built. So you need to understand the differences there and how that relates. Does this solve everything for every single problem? No. Water heater is one of those things, for example, that has changed a lot, which is like having a pan underneath it, draining to the outside of a house. Gas lines, for example, having a drip edge or a drip line where all the sediment can drop into, and it has to be pointing a certain way, a certain length. All that has changed over the years. So there's certain things that are more important than others, okay? The key here is to know, is it going to burn my house down? Is it going to put my family in harm's way? And in that case, okay, maybe we need to do something about this. What does that look like? Is it something I should have? Is it a deal breaker and I should have the seller do this? Or is it something that's not a big deal? I can handle that on my own after closing. Okay? Those are important things to know. So I hope that really summarizes it for you. We're not going to go too much deeper into this because it's a rabbit hole. I mean, we could talk about code all day and how it's changed over the last 70 years. And it's going to continue to change. So for the sake of this video, if you have a new home, you should really make sure, yes, it should meet code all the way across the board for today's time, all right? Or for the time it's being built. Again, my name is Carlos Colon, and if you have questions about buying a new home, selling a home, or just buying any home in general, please give us a call. Our number is 770-314-1285. Our website is www.georgiaperimeterhomes.com. Thanks.